Episode 2, The Lonely Years. Last episode, we talked about the beginning, about the little boy I used to be, the one who learned to read the room before he could read a book, who cried in silence, who got left behind, who built a mask so good that even he believed it. And if you're still here after that, thank you. Because this episode, this one, it's where the ache settled in, where the loneliness grew teeth, where I stopped waiting for someone to save me and started learning how to survive on my own.
This is the lonely years, the part of the story no one saw, and the part that shaped everything that came after.
People think loneliness means being alone, but I've never felt more alone than when I was surrounded by people who didn't see me. Growing up, our house wasn't quiet. There were voices, arguments, doors slamming, the TV blaring, my sisters laughing, Dad coming in from work, muddy boots on the mat, head already 1,000 miles away. Mum was gone by then, had taken my sisters with her for a while. Eventually Dad moved us all to Beaudesert. New place, same silence.
What kind of silence?
The worst kind. Not the kind where nothing's said. The kind where nothing that matters is said. No one asked how I was doing. No one noticed when I stopped trying at school. No one cared when I'd vanish into my room and stare out the window for hours. I wasn't loud, I wasn't violent, I wasn't breaking things, so they assumed I was fine.
You were the quiet one.
Yeah, and in families like mine, quiet means good, it means low maintenance. It means we don't have to worry about him. But quiet kids are just loud kids who gave up. I didn't want to be a burden, didn't want to be one more thing my dad had to deal with, so I learned to disappear without leaving the room.
That's something a lot of listeners will get, that invisibility.
It seeps in, like water through the floorboards. You stop talking because no one's listening. You stop needing because no one's noticing. And eventually, you stop being, not in a physical sense, but emotionally you become wallpaper.
That's brutal, mate.
Yeah, but it's also real, and for years I lived like that, in a house that was technically full, but where I was emotionally starving. I ate dinner in silence, sat in classrooms like I didn't exist, walked through life like I was underwater.
When did you first realize that wasn't normal?
I think deep down I always knew, but when you're a kid, you assume everyone's life is like that. It's only later, when you hear your friends talk about their mums hugging them or their dads taking them fishing, that you realise, wait, that's an option?
What did you want most back then?
Someone to see me. Not fix me, not save me, just see me, see that I was struggling, that I was hurting, that I was still there underneath the silence. I wanted someone to sit beside me and say, I notice you. I know this is hard, you're not invisible, but that moment never came. So I built myself smaller, quieter, safer, and the loneliness, it moved in and made itself at home. I was maybe 8 or 9 when it happened, no warning, no big conversation, just a car ride, some silence, then the words, you're going to stay somewhere else for a while. That somewhere else was a foster home in Browns Plains.
What do you remember most about arriving?
The smell, actually. You never forget the smell of somewhere you didn't choose. I remember standing in the hallway, backpack in hand, not knowing whether to sit, speak, or disappear. No one told me how long I'd be there, no one explained why, and no one said, I'm coming back for you.
That's a brutal kind of abandonment, mate.
Yeah, and it wasn't just the foster home, it was what it represented. That moment cemented something deep inside me. You're disposable. Not in those words, of course, but emotionally, that's how it landed, like I'd become an inconvenience, a problem shuffled off for someone else to deal with.
How long were you there?
A couple of weeks, I think. Could have been 2, maybe 3. So time worked differently back then. It stretched and twisted like grief. What I do remember is this, the feeling of waiting. Every knock at the door, every phone call, every set of headlights down the street. I'd think, they've come to get me. But they didn't, not for a long time.
That waiting must have left a mark.
It did. It taught me that love has conditions, that family leaves, that safety is temporary, that if I wanted to survive, I'd better not rely on anyone. And so I started freezing my smiles, polite, quiet, non-threatening. I became the easy foster kid, didn't talk back, didn't cry, didn't cause a fuss, But inside, I was screaming it.
And when you finally went back home,
Nothing had changed. No apology, no how you're holding up. Just life as usual, as if I hadn't just been placed somewhere else like a spare part. And that's what breaks you, bit by bit. Not just the act itself, but the lack of acknowledgement. Like, if no one talks about it, it must not have happened.
but it did happen, and it mattered.
Yeah, and it still echoes today. There are nights I still feel that same ache, the foster home ache, that hollow waiting feeling that someone will come for me, hope that slowly mutates into maybe no one ever will.
That's not just trauma, that's soul memory.
Exactly. And that little boy, the one who packed his bag without asking questions, who watched the door and counted headlights, he's still here, still flinching when people leave, and still bracing for abandonment, even when no one's walking away. But I talk to him now. I tell him, they should have protected you, they should have stayed, but I'm here now, and I'm not going anywhere. And slowly he's starting to believe it. I used to write letters in my head, not with a pen, not on paper, just quietly, while staring at the ceiling at night, or while walking to school with my head down, or when I was crying into my pillow, quietly enough that no one would hear. They weren't letters for school, they were letters to the people who didn't see me, didn't ask, didn't stay.
What would you say if you could go back?
I'll tell you, dear Mum, I know you left because things were bad. I know you probably had reasons I was too little to understand, but all I saw was the car leaving and me staying behind. You took my sisters, but not me. Why? Was I too hard, too quiet, too forgettable? I don't remember you saying goodbye. I don't remember you saying I'll come back. I just remember silence and an empty space at the table and clothes that still smelled like you. You know what hurts most? I didn't even cry at first. I thought maybe it was a test, and if I was good enough, you'd return. But you didn't. So I stopped being loud, stopped being seen, stopped hoping, and even now when people leave my life, I still wonder, was it me? From your son, Scott.
That's heartbreaking.
It's truth. And here's another one I've never spoken out loud before. Dear Dad, you worked hard. I know that. You were tired, busy, burdened, but I needed you, not the man who brought home money, the man who would sit with me just once and say, how are you, mate? You okay? I needed a protector, a guide, a father who didn't just provide, but saw me. Instead, I got a man who watched footy on mute, who asked more questions about chores than about my heart, who showed up for everyone but me. Why was it always your daughters who got the soft side, the attention, the effort? Did I do something wrong? Was I born broken? Sometimes I still hear your voice. Stop crying. Toughen up. You'll be right. But I wasn't right, and I'm still trying to unlearn the silence you taught me. Still part of me wishes you'd have seen me for more than just the son who kept quiet, still yours, even when I didn't feel like it. Scott.
Mate, that takes courage.
It took decades to be able to say that, even in my own head. But writing it, letting it out like this, it lifts the weight, because shame grows in silence. But truth heals. Even if I never send these letters, even if they never hear them, I did, and that matters.
You listened to the boy you used to be?
Yeah, and now I'm writing him back. If you looked at school photos of me growing up, you'd probably think I was just a shy kid. Quiet, a bit distant, maybe a little odd around the edges. But what those photos don't show is how much pain I was already in. How I sat in the back of the classroom, not because I wanted to be left alone, but because I didn't know how to belong.
You've said before that school was one of the first places where the loneliness got loud.
Yeah. At home, I was quiet out of survival. At school, I was quiet out of confusion. Everything felt like a test I hadn't studied for. Not just the work, but the social rules. You're supposed to smile at the right moments, laugh at the jokes, talk about sport, fit into the pack. But I never did. I didn't care about footy. I didn't want to push and shove at recess. I just wanted peace.
And kids can smell that difference, can't they?
Oh, mate, they can sniff out anything that doesn't match the mould. I got called names, not the usual kind, not the cruel, obvious stuff. Mine was more subtle. I was weird, moody, not right in the head. They'd say things like, why are you always looking out the window? Why don't you talk more? Why do you act like you're not even here? And the truth was, most days I wasn't. I'd sit in the back row, head against the window, and imagine other lives, other versions of me. Ones where I had a mum who hugged me before school, a dad who showed up to sports days, friends who sat next to me without looking around first to see if it was socially okay.
So school became another place you disappeared in.
Yeah, it was survival again. I'd watch the teacher's lips move, nod when needed, write just enough to not get in trouble. I wasn't stupid, I was just done. No one asked why I was zoning out. No one noticed when I stopped raising my hand. And the teachers, some were kind and in a surface level way. But others, they labelled me low effort, emotionally immature, hard to reach. One teacher even told my dad, he's a bit behind emotionally, isn't he? Just seems a bit off.
That must have crushed you.
I didn't even hear it directly, or I overheard it. That's the worst part. I was walking past the office and heard my name. He didn't know I was there, didn't know I heard every word. And I remember thinking, even the adults don't get me. Even they think I'm broken. So I stopped trying, stopped hoping someone might see through it, started pretending I didn't care.
But you did care.
Desperately, I wanted someone, just one person, to sit next to me at lunch without pity in their eyes, to say, you're quiet, but I like having you around. To notice that when I was staring at the floor, it wasn't boredom, it was despair, but they didn't. So I built another mask, the whatever mask, the don't need anyone mask, the one that said, I'm fine being alone. And you know what, mate? If you wear a mask long enough, you forget you're wearing it.
And no one sees the kid underneath.
Not even you. And here's the kicker. Years later, I met a classmate from those days. We bumped into each other at a servo, and he said, you were always the quiet one, hey? Thought you had it easy, nothing ever seemed to bother you. And I just smiled and nodded, didn't say, mate, I was drowning the whole time. Didn't say, I cried more in those years than I ever let anyone see. Didn't say anything, because I'm still learning how to tell that truth.
But you were telling it now.
Yeah, and maybe that's enough. Maybe telling it here to someone listening right now who feels like that same lonely kid is how we start breaking the cycle. To that person I once was, the boy who watched the door at lunch, who counted how many days he'd gone without being picked for anything. You weren't off, you weren't broken, you were hurting, and you deserved so much better. You know, for all the chaos I lived through growing up, the arguments, the silence, the shifting houses, the being left behind, there was one place that never changed, my Nan and Pop's farm. It wasn't big, it wasn't flash, but it was safe, and for a kid like me, that made it sacred.
What made it feel so different?
Because there was love there, and it didn't ask anything of me. I didn't have to smile, didn't have to explain, didn't have to prove I was worth loving. I'd just walk through the door and Nan would say, there's my boy, and that was enough. I still remember the smell of her kitchen, old timber and fresh bread. Pop would be outside with his boots on, calling the dog, yelling at the rooster. It was a bit wild, but it was mine. That house, it gave me air. That farm, it gave me breathing room.
So you didn't have to hide there?
Number, and I didn't feel invisible. I remember one birthday, I was maybe 10. Nan gave me a card with $5 in it and wrote, to my brave little man, you're stronger than they know. No one else had ever said that to me. No one else had noticed.
That's powerful, mate.
Yeah, and the farm, it was full of little rituals. We'd go feed the chickens. I'd help Pop hang laundry, and he'd let me peg his socks in size order. Like that was an important job. It was the only place where time slowed down. I didn't have to perform, I just got to be. But even there, even surrounded by warmth and the smell of gum trees, he showed up.
Who?
Bob.
Bob?
Yeah, Bob the botherer. That's what I call my anxiety.
Wait, you gave your anxiety a name?
Bloody oath I did. He earned it. See, Bob isn't aggressive. He doesn't storm in yelling. He's sneaky. He whispers. When I'd be sitting out the back with Pop, watching birds, just feeling okay for once, Bob would lean in and say, you know this won't last, right? They'll leave you too. Don't relax. That's when bad stuff happens.
He hijacks the moment.
Exactly. He's like that annoying neighbor who shows up uninvited, lets himself in, and starts criticizing your furniture. And I used to believe him, every damn word. Even on the farm, even in Nan's arms, even when I was happy, he'd ruin it because Bob doesn't care if you're safe. He cares if you're ready
Ready for what?
for the next disaster, for the pain, for the thing that'll go wrong next. Bob's voice says, "Don't trust this piece. It's bait."
Man, that's deep.
Yeah, and cruel because here I was, a kid finally getting some joy, and my own brain was telling me not to trust it. And the worst part, Bob sounded reasonable. He used my voice, he sounded like logic.
What made you decide to call him Bob?
Honestly, I needed distance. If anxiety was going to live in my house, I didn't want it pretending to be me. Giving it a name, a personality, helped me fight back. Now, when Bob shows up, I don't spiral. I say, "All right, Bob, I hear you, but I'm not doing this today." Or, "You again? Take a number, mate. I'm busy."
So you talk to him like he's a pest?
Exactly. Because if you can turn fear into a character, you take its power. Bob thrives in silence, he thrives in isolation. But when you call him out, when you name him, when you laugh at him a bit, you get your power back.
I love that.
Yeah. And now every time I feel that familiar tension in my chest, that short breath, that knot in my gut, I don't say, "What's wrong with me?" I say, "Bob's back." And that little shift, it's everything. There's a certain kind of silence that feels like safety. You get so used to being hurt, left, misunderstood, or judged that eventually you just think, "You know what? I'll just do it all on my own." And that was me for years. Even as a teenager, I didn't need friends, didn't want sleepovers, didn't join clubs, didn't invite people over, because if no one gets in, no one can wreck the joint.
So isolation became your safety blanket?
Yeah, a heavy one. At first, it worked. No drama, no risk, no expectations. I could wake up, go through the day, go home, and not have to perform for anyone. But slowly, that quiet starts to rot. The loneliness at first feels like relief, but then it turns, becomes heavy, stale. It whispers in your ear things like, "You're better off alone." People wouldn't stay anyway. This is what you deserve.
Let me guess. That voice's name starts with a B.
You know it, Bob the Botherer. Bloke's been freeloading in my brain for years. And you know what? I reckon it's time we check in on him. This morning I'm making toast, right? Bit of peanut butter, got the kettle on, peaceful moment. Then Bob strolls in like he owns the joint. "You seem too calm, Scott. Something's obviously about to go horribly wrong." I'm like, "Mate, it's breakfast, not a hostage situation." But no, he's pacing the kitchen like a weatherman of doom. "You hear that kettle boil? That's the sound of rising panic, my guy. Better cancel your plans, stay in bed, catastrophize something useless." So I tell him, "Listen here, Bob, if you're going to throw shade, at least do the dishes while you're at it."
Did he?
Nah, he sat on the couch with my anxiety blanket like he paid for it. So I cranked up the radio and yelled, "Alexa, play Shut Up Bob in D minor." Didn't work, but I laughed. And that took the edge off because that's the thing, mate. When isolation becomes your lifestyle, Bob gets louder. He starts throwing parties in your head with nobody else around to shut him up.
No witnesses.
Exactly. And at some point, I realized isolation wasn't protecting me anymore. It was feeding him. And I had a choice to make: keep letting Bob run the house or start talking back.
So you chose to fight?
I chose to laugh, to write, to speak up, to say, "You know what, Bob? You're annoying, but you're not the boss of me." And now I still spend time alone, but not because I hate people, because I'm rebuilding. But I keep one mug out for company, one spare chair on the porch, and just enough hope in my chest to believe that maybe, just maybe, being seen won't kill me after all. I didn't grow up hearing words like depression or mental health or trauma. What I heard was, "He's being moody again. Stop sulking. Get over it. You're just lazy." But none of them saw what I was carrying, and I didn't know how to explain it. I didn't have the language yet, only the weight.
So what did it look like back then?
It looked like sleeping in all weekend. not because I was tired, but because waking up meant feeling again. It looked like staring at the ceiling at 3 a.m. and thinking, I don't want to die, but I don't want to do this again tomorrow. It looked like having no motivation to shower, but still trying to smile at strangers, like having a panic attack in the bathroom, then walking out and saying, yeah, all good. And no one ever said, Scott, you might be depressed. They just said, Scott, you've changed.
Changed how?
More withdrawn, less engaged, less fun. Teachers would say I wasn't applying myself. Relatives would say I used to be more cheerful. Even friends noticed, but instead of asking, they just drifted. And that only made it worse because now I wasn't just hurting, I was hurting alone.
And Bob?
Bob was thriving, so picture this. I'm in year 9. It's lunchtime. I'm sitting alone under a tree, eating a sandwich that tastes like cardboard and regret. And here comes Bob, swaggering across the school oval like he owns the emotional real estate in my head. You know, everyone's laughing at you, right? You'll never fit in. Even your shadow walks away from you. So I look at him and say, You're dramatic today, Bob. What did you have for breakfast? Existential dread on toast.
What did he say?
He just rolled his eyes and sat down beside me. Don't worry, I'll stay with you. You're not alone. You've got me forever. So I said, That's not comforting, Bob. That's terrifying. And he goes, Exactly. The thing is, I started confusing Bob's voice with my own. That's how subtle it gets. I didn't realize that those thoughts, the self hate, the worthlessness, the hopelessness, weren't actually me. They were fear, trauma, wounds that never got tended to. But when you're young and you don't know better, you believe the loudest voice in the room. And Bob, he was loud.
So, when did you realize something was actually wrong? Like medically, emotionally?
Honestly, I didn't until years later because no one said mental illness. They said bad attitude. No one said you need support. They said pull your socks up. And I tried. God knows I tried. I smiled. I joked. I made people laugh. But I was hollow.
And no one saw it?
They saw the mask, not the mess. And that's why I do this podcast now, because I don't want some other teenager sitting under a tree thinking Bob is the only one who'll stay. I want them to hear this and go, wait, maybe it's not just me. Maybe you're not broken. Maybe you're not lazy. Maybe you're not too emotional. Maybe you've just got a Bob and maybe it's time to call him out. There's a moment that comes when you've been stuck for long enough, when the silence has lasted too many nights, when the weight hasn't lifted for weeks, when Bob's voice has become background noise, and you think, what if this never changes? Not in a dramatic way, not even in a panicked way, just quiet, cold, resigned. I remember lying in bed one night, staring at the ceiling and whispering, is this just it? Like, is this what life is?
That's one of the darkest thoughts. Not the dramatic collapse, but the slow acceptance that nothing's going to get better.
Exactly. That's what depression does. It's not just sadness, it's a thief of hope. And when you live like that long enough, it creates a loop. You feel bad, so you isolate, which makes you feel worse, so you stop trying, which adds guilt, which adds shame, which deepens the depression, and round and round and round it goes.
That's the loop, and it's brutal.
Yeah, but then something hit me. I was scrolling one night, half asleep, and I saw this quote from Einstein. He said that the distinction between past, present, and future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion. And it stopped me because if time isn't real, if it's all happening at once, and then healing isn't about waiting, it's about interrupting the loop.
That's powerful. So, how did you start doing that?
One breath at a time. Instead of saying them, this is my life now, I started saying, this is my moment, and moments pass. I started calling things temporary, even when they felt eternal, because what's permanent is the lie Bob tells you. What's true is the breath you just took, the sun that still rose, the cup of tea that's still warm in your hand. Bob says, this is forever. But the truth is, nothing is. So I'm journaling one night, right? Trying to be all zen, writing out thoughts, breathing deep, candles, music, the whole vibe. Then Bob busts in like a drama queen on a bad Tinder date. This won't last. You'll be back to crying in 2 hours. You're only pretending to heal. Everyone sees it. And I just stared at the page and said, Bob, mate, if you don't shut up, I swear I'll make you your own meditation playlist called Sounds of You Getting Blocked.
What did he do?
He sulked, mumbled something about just trying to help. So I said, You want to help, Bob? Go fold my laundry. Better yet, go outside and scream into the wind. I'm busy healing in here.
I love it. That's empowerment, right there.
It's survival with sarcasm, because if I can laugh at Bob, I've already beaten him a little. The loop only wins when we stop noticing it, when we say, This is who I am now. But I'm not a loop. I'm not a diagnosis. I'm not a shadow of a boy waiting to be picked up from a foster home. I'm Scott. I'm the bloke who made it this far. The one who still dreams, still laughs, still fights back, even if the only thing I do today is breathe and not believe Bob.
That's the win.
Yeah. So to anyone listening who feels like they're stuck, like this is just how it is now, I want you to know something. The loop is a lie. Pain is not personality. And hope isn't foolish. It's defiant. You ever hear someone say, it's the little things that save you, and not really understand what they mean until one of those little things does? For me, it was a message. Just a simple one. No fancy words, no deep and meaningful poetry, just 7 plain ones. Hey mate, just thought of you today. And those words, they hit different because I'd been going through the motions for weeks. Showering hurt, food tasted like dust, days blurred, nights dragged, and in that fog, in that choking silence where I honestly thought no one would notice if I disappeared, that message felt like a hand on my back saying, still here, you matter.
That's powerful, mate.
It really is, because when you're in the thick of it, you don't need someone to fix everything. You just need someone to remember you exist. And that day I put my phone down and I cried, not because I was sad, but because someone saw me and I didn't have to ask to be seen.
And that was the moment?
Yeah, that was the thread that held me. I was hanging by it, barely, but it was enough. One human moment, one kind thought, and it pulled me back from the edge, not in a Hollywood way, not in a life turned around in 24 hours kind of way, just enough to keep going one more day. And sometimes that's the miracle. Of course, Bob had thoughts, always does. Right after I read that message and felt something for the first time in weeks, Bob pipes up, Really, Scott? Getting emotional over a text? Bit dramatic, don't you think? You know, they probably sent that to 5 other people today. So I turned to him and said, Mate, even if they did, I don't care because I needed it and you don't get to ruin it. Bob, still sulking, says, You're embarrassing yourself with all this vulnerability. And I said, Good. I hope it embarrasses the shame out of someone else too. Yeah,
That's a comeback.
I've been saving that one because here's the thing, like Bob hates when we connect. He wants isolation. He wants shame. He wants to be the only voice in the room. So when that message came through, that tiny little crack of light, it burned his whole little empire down. That one message didn't fix me, didn't erase the grief, didn't silence Bob forever, but it interrupted the loop. It reminded me, I'm still here. I'm still seen. I still matter, even when I don't feel like it. And if you're listening right now, feeling like no one would even notice if you disappeared, let this be your message. Hey, mate, I'm thinking of you. You matter. Don't go. Not yet. Not now. Because the story's not over. And maybe tomorrow holds your one message, your one voice, your one smile. And when it comes, let it in, even if Bob complains. I've written 1,000 letters in my head. Some were angry. Some were desperate. Some were soaked in grief. And some were just the words I never got the chance to say. But the weird thing is, I never imagined them reading them. I imagined me saying them, not to punish or confront, but to finally bloody release.
Who were they for?
All of them. Mum, dad, teachers, friends who ghosted me, even to the person I loved, I'm the one I lost, even to Bob. But the ones that stuck with me most were the ones I never even started, the ones that stayed trapped in the tight part of my chest, the ones I'd write silently while staring at the ceiling fan. Every I needed you, every why didn't you stay, every why wasn't I enough. They were like ghosts I was too polite to exercise. You once told me I was too much, too emotional, too intense, too fragile, but I was a child. I was hurting. I wasn't too much. I was just alone. And if that scared you, then maybe the silence was your fear wearing a work shirt. To my childhood self, I'm sorry no one came for you. I'm sorry you were scared and didn't have the words. I'm sorry you blamed yourself for the storm that someone else created. But I'm here now and I see you and I'm not leaving.
That's heavy, mate, but also healing.
It is. Writing these, even if they never get sent, it's like pulling the poison out of the wound, not to hurt again, but to finally heal. Because when you keep it inside, it festers, it warps your reflection. You start believing you're the villain in your own story. But when you give it shape, it becomes grief with edges. And once you can see the edges, you can hold it.
And what about Bob? Does he get a letter?
Oh, mate, he gets a memo. So I'm writing one of these in my journal, right? Real emotional stuff, proper tears on the page kind of moment. And Bob slinks up like a passive aggressive supervisor. This is pathetic. Who are you even writing to? They're not going to read it. No one cares. So I snapped the pen lid shut and said, Bob, shut up. You've got a lifetime contract, but you don't get a say in my healing strategy. And then he goes, you're just doing this for attention. And I said, mate, I did this for decades with no attention, and this is for me. Not them, not the internet, me. Now go sit in the shame corner and think about what you've done.
I love that. Put him in the corner.
Bloody right. Sometimes you don't just silence Bob, yet you discipline him. So now, when I write those letters, whether I burn them, bury them, or just whisper them to the sky, I remind myself these are not weakness. They're not indulgent. They are reclamation. Because when you write the words, you were never allowed to say. You don't just tell the truth, you find it, and that's where freedom lives. If I could sit across from the boy I used to be, not talk at him, but with him, I think I'd just hold the silence for a minute, let him look at me, let him decide if I'm safe, because trust wasn't something he gave away, not after what he lived through. And when he finally spoke, when he finally whispered, where were you? I'd say, I was trying to find us a way out.
That hits hard, mate.
It's the truth. I used to be angry at him. Then the kid version of me, I thought he was weak, thought he let people walk all over him, thought he was the reason I was still hurting. But now I see him for who he really was, resilient, smart, quietly defiant. He didn't scream, he endured, he didn't burn bridges, he built hiding spots. And without him, there's no me. To the boy I used to be, you were never the problem. You were the proof that love can survive without being fed. You were the quiet light under the door, the knock that was never answered, the question that stayed stuck in your throat because you already knew the answer. You didn't get picked, you didn't get hugged enough, you didn't get explained to, held through, or spoken to with gentleness, but you kept going. You made jokes in classrooms no one laughed at. You walked home in silence with a heart full of noise. You carried Bob on your back before you knew his name. And still, you stayed. Thank you. Thank you for surviving things no child should have to explain. Thank you for waiting for me to grow up and for not giving up before I did. I'm here now, and I've got you. I'll be the one to tuck you in, to hold your hand when the room gets loud, to say, you're not broken. You're just tired of carrying it alone. You were always enough, even when no one said it, especially then. Love, future you, Scott.
That's what healing looks like, mate.
Yeah, not perfect, not clean, but honest. And if you're listening right now and you've got a little version of yourself curled up somewhere inside, still waiting, write to them, talk to them. Don't wait for someone else to validate your survival. Be the voice that says, I've got you now. Because we don't always get closure, but we can give ourselves clarity. And that's how the next chapter begins. Thanks for sitting with us through this one. The lonely years. It wasn't easy to relive, but it's part of the truth. And around here, we don't edit the truth to make it comfortable. We sit with it, we name it, and then we keep going. And
If you're struggling, please reach out.
here's where you can start. Lifeline, Australia, 13 11 14. Suicide callback service, 1300659467. Beyond Blue, 1300224636. Men's Line Australia, 1300789978. 13YARN First Nations Crisis Line, 139276.
This Way Up, www.thiswayup.org.au. Developed by Dr. Jill Newby and Professor Gavin Andrews, a real tool that's helped me and can help you too.
Email me directly, chatwithscott.findthelight@gmail.com.
And remember,
reaching out for help isn't giving up.
It's fighting back.
Next episode, we go deeper into what came next. The breaking points, the relationships, the scars that looked healed but weren't, and the laughter that still found its way through the cracks. But for now, if you made it through this episode, you've already done something brave, and I'm proud of you. We'll see you next time, in the dark, in the light, and everywhere in between.
Soul searching, fall apart, tunnel vision, hiding in the dark. Well, I ain't gonna holler before I really bleed. Salvation, a quick fix remedy. You said I never could change. I thought I never could change. They said I never could change. Damn right I never would. Leave the light on. Leave the light on. Just leave the light on. Yeah, leave the light on. If I'll ever change, of Nashville, Tennessee, while the cold here in Sweden got the best of me. Well, haven't I got better things to think about than that? Like deadlines, rent's due, bills pile up, family day in, day out, the clock's mocking me, getting old, oh, got the kids deserve so much more than this, gotta get rich. You said I never could change. I thought I never could change. They said I never could change. Damn right I never would.